Tonight's game against the St. Louis Blues should be considered a must-win for the Nashville Predators, but relax, it's not for the reasons you may think. We'll talk about it on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start with a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys and we appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio. Normally, I have a partner in crime, Ann Kimmel, but she is off today. A big show for tonight's game between the Nashville Predators and the St. Louis Blues. We're going to talk about why tonight's game is a must-win for the Nashville Predators. No, not for the playoff or standing reasons you may think, but there is some implication as to how this game goes down tonight. We'll also talk about a wish list that we want to see from the Nashville Predators after 3 straight losses, 3 things that we would love to see the Preds do tonight. And it's a Western Conference Thursday. We're just cheating a little bit. We're going to look to the 3 teams that I think are most likely to win the cup out of the Western Conference. All of that is coming up on today's show. Let's start, though, with a look ahead to tonight's showdown between the Predators and the St. Louis Blues. Whew! It's going to be a doozy tonight, folks. Buckle up. A lot of animosity when these two teams get together, and especially this late in the season, because there is a lot to play for between these two teams tonight. The Nashville Predators, of course, have lost 3 straight, but they are firmly in the first wild card spot right now. The St. Louis Blues are the first team out of the playoff picture right now, but they're still 3 points out of a spot. They're 6 points behind Nashville, and they are red hot as well. With all the talk about the Nashville Predators and their streak, it's kind of been overlooked. The Blues are 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. They are on a heater, and they are going up fast. So, as I mentioned off the top, I called this a must-win game for the Nashville Predators, and I truly believe that. No, the Nashville Predators aren't going to, tank and miss the playoffs if they lose this game or anything like that. Let's be honest, the Nashville Predators are still in a very good spot when it comes to their fate heading into this postseason. I think Alex Doherty pointed out on Twitter earlier today that after last night's loss, the Nashville Predators playoff predictability percentage, or how much of a lock they are in the playoffs, went from a 9.92, I believe, a 99.2% chance of making the playoffs to a 98.6. So yeah, it's this mini losing streak isn't going to kick the Nashville Predators out of the postseason. It might do some damage if they keep losing, but as of now, there's no reason to panic just yet. And my colleague Ann Kimmel did a good job of explaining that on yesterday's show. Here's where I think tonight is a must-win, though, for the Nashville Predators. You take a look at the matchup between these two teams. As we mentioned, the Blues are red hot. The Nashville Predators have been red hot, but have lost 3 straight. We mentioned where the Blues are in the postseason compared to Nashville. They're 6 points behind Nashville, 3 points out of a playoff spot. They're fighting for their lives right now. The St. Louis Blues are going to throw everything they can into their opponents for these last 7 games of the season. This is the same amount of games the Nashville Predators have. Long story short, this is going to be a playoff atmosphere. And it's probably going to be that way for the Nashville Predators for the rest of this season. You look at the schedule remaining for the Nashville Predators, and I believe Every game is, other than the last two, which are against Colorado and Chicago, or no, not Colorado, Chicago and Columbus, another COL team. Every game from there on out is against a team that still has something to play for. The Islanders are still firmly in the playoff race right now. The Devils are probably out of it, but they're going to be trying to, scratch and claw their way through these last remaining 2 weeks of the season. You have Winnipeg next week. That's going to be the Super Bowl of the Central Division for these next 2 weeks. Then you have the Chicago, Columbus games we talked about, and then you end at Pittsburgh, who they themselves are also still holding on to a slim playoff hope right now. So every team from here on out is going to have something to play for. The Nashville Predators certainly have something to play for. So when you combine that, especially tonight's game, when you have a Central Division rival that's right on your tail in the standings, this is basically a playoff game for Nashville. I truly believe that. The crowd is going to go absolutely wild. St. Louis is going to bring their A game. They're going to bring the intensity. And if you're Nashville, this is all happening after you've lost 3 straight games. It's 3 straight games after that massive 18-game point streak that got you into this playoff conversation to begin with. It's a gut check game, plain and simple. The Nashville Predators are going to have games in which at least one of the teams has their back against the wall and has nothing to lose from here on out. So the Nashville Predators have to be prepared for that, and they have to be prepared for these playoff atmospheres. And part of that is being able to bounce back and get yourself up for the next game. We thought that after the debacles against Arizona and Colorado, the Nashville Predators were going to do that against Boston, and they didn't, quite frankly. I know it was 0-0 after 2 periods. I know it was close. I know it was a good defensive battle, but you watch that game and Nashville just didn't really have a lot of energy. They were kind of on the back heel a little bit. Boston was really sort of controlling the flow of the game. Nashville kind of kind of sat back and tried to let the game come to them. But by that point, it was just one mistake opened the door for the Bruins, and that was it. And Nashville could never really get back in it. So how are you? That was supposed to be the response game after those 2 bad games, and it didn't happen. So now this is sort of your last window to really sort of, slap yourself in the face a little bit, look in the mirror, throw the cold water up there, and really wake up from this 3-game sleepwalk that you've been in. You're at Bridgestone Arena against a team pretty much all your fan base hates. It's going to be loud. It's going to be rowdy. The fans are going to be ready to explode and cheer at any given goal. You have to take advantage of that. And if the Nashville Predators don't take advantage of that, if they sleepwalk through this game again, like they've sleepwalked through some of the earlier games, during this 3-game skid, then there's concern about, okay, what's the mindset of this team? What is the mindset of this team going into the playoffs that you have a prime opportunity against a rival to really right this ship and really sort of put your stamp on, on how the rest of the season is going to turn out, being able to kind of turn your play around so you have the fate in your hands. This is your time's running out to do that, because you don't want to go into the playoffs on a sour note. You don't want to go on a skid, because then you don't have any momentum going into the postseason. And as we've seen in past years, it does matter how you sort of finish the year, where your mindset, your health, your momentum are in those last couple of weeks of the season. That does matter for teams. So for Nashville, they have to get this right. And I think it has to be tonight. It has to be at home. It has to be in front of this home crowd. And the Nashville Predators need a hard-fought win tonight. Otherwise, even though the Nashville Predators still have a pretty good chance of making the postseason, at that point, you're going to be concerned about where this team is heading into aforementioned postseason. So, what are something the Nashville Predators can do tonight that would make us feel good about this game? Well, after those 3 straight losses, we have a wish list of things that we want to see from the Nashville Predators tonight. And we'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. First, though, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive in your garage. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, we're talking roof racks, we're talking exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your car, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, here's a question for you guys. Do you guys hang out all day, either after a long day after work or, on your couch if you're working from home? Do you have Fox Sports or ESPN just going on in the background of your TV? Do you find yourself having to turn down the volume with all that Stephen A. Smith shouting like, LeBron is one of the greatest of all time? That was my Stephen A. Smith impression. Well, long story short, try to avoid that. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today, it's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming and fussing on your TVs. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good shows, so be sure you guys go and give that a check out. Let's talk about tonight's game between the Nashville Predators and the St. Louis Blues, shall we? There are 3 things. Actually, no. Let's make that 4 things because I just thought of one during this ad break that we want to see tonight from the Nashville Predators against the Blues. Things that maybe would signal that the Preds are going in the right direction. Number 1, it starts with the top line for the Nashville Predators. I want to see the top line win their matchups tonight against the St. Louis Blues. Now, obviously, Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist, those big 4 have really been carrying the load for the Nashville Predators this season, at least in terms of skaters. Those are the guys that have absolutely dominated. The Preds are where they're at in the standings because those guys have played some of their best hockey that they've, quite frankly, in some of their cases, have ever played. That's been the key to the Nashville Predators to exceed expectations and get to where they are. It hasn't been there during this 3-game streak. They've scored some points, especially Philip Forsberg had a couple games in there, but it just doesn't seem like those guys, especially Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Josi, have kind of had the same impact on the game, at least in terms of changing the game in Nashville's favor. Roman Josi -8 during the Nashville Predators 3-game losing streak. He was on the ice for all 3 of the Bruins goals. Not all of them were his fault, but it was a turnover by Josi that led to the Bruins' second goal, the one that went ahead. Philip Forsberg, despite scoring, is still a -6 over the past 3 games. O'Reilly, a -6 over the past 3 games. Now, here's the disclaimer for everybody that's into advanced stats. I know plus minus is not the perfect stat. I know it's not the end-all be-all, and I know it's very flawed. It doesn't take into account other things going on, but it does at least give you the hint that that line is out there for more goals against than goals they're generating. A lot more in this 6-game streak. And then you go back and tape and you watch why, and you do see I don't want to say like they're playing bad or anything, but they're getting beat by the people they're getting matched up against. Obviously Clayton Keller, another big game for the Coyotes against the Predators. The Colorado top line absolutely dominated the Nashville Predators, and the Predators top line were against them for most of the night. You looked at the Bruins and a couple of sloppy plays. Marchand made them pay at one. The power play did sort of a big debacle, and that led to the Bruins' second goal. So they're getting beat by the other team's top line. And that's a problem because you want these guys to be out there scoring more goals than they're giving up. They might have a chance against St. Louis tonight because we mentioned the Blues 7-2-1. They're red hot. It's interesting enough, though, it's not really because of the Blues' top scores or anything like that, because over the past 5 games, Robert Thomas, their leading scorer, has been cold. I think he only has 1 point in the last 5 games. Jordan Kyrou had a hat trick, a week and a half ago, but has been sort of since then. Bush Nevis has kind of fallen off a little bit. So they're getting these contributions from their depth, not necessarily from their top line. So, if the Nashville Predators can take advantage of that, not saying they're going to stay cold this whole thing, but well, it's a prime opportunity for the Nashville Predators top line to really come out and play in this game and get a big win. So we'll see what happens there. The other thing on the wish list, and Ann Kimmel did a really good job breaking this down yesterday. Oh man, can we please see something from the power play, for the love of God? We talked about the Nashville Predators power play, and Ann Kimmel did a good job yesterday sort of breaking down some of the things that have been going wrong. The Nashville Predators during this 3-game losing streak, 2 for 11 on the power play. They're 0-9. Actually, yeah, let's go into that stat a little bit further, because they were 2-2 against Arizona. So that means they were 0 for 9 in these last 2 losses to Boston and to Colorado. They were 0-5 against Colorado. They were 0-4 against the Bruins the other night. It hasn't been good. And we talked about, sort of the speed being the issue. We heard some quotes from Andrew Burnett about, feeling like the team not necessarily, being able to translate the speed from, some of their other 5-on-5 play into the man advantage. Something's just not clicking there. But at some point, you got to start converting in some of these chances, because that's going to be a big key to success in the postseason. You're not going to win games, these tight playoff games, these games that go 2-1, 3-2, go into double and triple overtime. You're not going to do that if you don't take advantage of the chances other teams give you. And so that's why the Nashville Predators need to start getting something going on the power play here. Even a goal, even if it's 1 for 5 tonight against the Blues, would be something. If you can see some positive signs from either of the Preds units, especially the top unit, I think we'd be in good shape tonight to see that. I'm going to throw this one in here late, and I want to see more big contributions from Jason Zucker. Jason Zucker has really impressed me with every game he's played for the Nashville Predators, and he's not getting a ton of ice time. 4 points in the last 4 games. Of course, he had those 2 goals against Arizona. He had a big goal or a big assist on a earlier goal against Colorado back when the Predators were actually winning that game. The Preds aren't playing him a lot. They're just about 13 and a half minutes a game since he's been with Nashville. But he's gotten, given the Preds a lot of bang for your buck contributions, I think, especially here lately. He's a speed guy. He's a guy that I think does a little of the micro things well. Good in transition, good at winning puck battles along the boards, good at kind of, skating his way into, where the other team wants to play the puck, kind of taking up space. He's not your classic like two-way forward or anything like that, but he does a lot of things really well. And he has been good when the Nashville Predators have used him. In fact, I think he is second since the trade deadline went down, or at least in the past. I think it was in the past 7 games, something like that, where he's been second in terms of points per 60 minutes on the entire Nashville Predators. So that is something to consider. And I think if you see more Jason Zucker, maybe the Nashville Predators have another really good depth piece, somebody that can really ramp up the middle of the lineup for the Nashville Predators to kind of support the top line. And the last thing I want to see tonight, because I can't resist a good troll move, is I want to see the Predators just piss off Jordan Binnington, assuming Jordan Binnington is in net. Look, here's the one thing I'm going to say about Jordan Binnington. He is a good goalie. I'm not going to deny that. He is a good goalie. He's doing really well this season, .913 save percentage. His play down the stretch is a big reason the Blues are even still in a playoff conversation to begin with. But the one thing we've seen with Binnington over the years, this season as well, is that when the Predators not the Predators, but when any opponent gets to him early and really shakes him off his game, he sort of loses it. Not necessarily like the classic Jordan Binnington where he starts slashing everybody in front of him or starts punching people in the face, but he's just one of those goalies where if things go wrong, things go really wrong. And that's kind of been his Achilles heel. Now, when things go right or it's a tight game, that's when he thrives. We saw it all the way back in 2019, and we've seen it at times this season when it's close. He's admittedly one of the top clutch goalies when things go well, but when things go wrong or there's a little bit of adversity, he has a tendency to fade. There's been a lot of really good goaltenders around the NHL in history that have fallen into that same thing. The thing for the Nashville Predators is get to him early. Like, you have this home crowd behind you. Everybody in that home crowd is going to hate Jordan Binnington. Let's get him off the game early. Let's rattle him a little bit. Let's start the game like you did against Arizona and Colorado, where you just jump out to a big lead early. This time you're at home. You can get the crowd into it. We're not going to talk about what happened in the rest of those games, but the starts for those 2 games were good. This time you have the crowd. Get the crowd into it, get momentum, and really sort of drive that point home. And if you can do that, if you can score a lot early or dominate the play early, make it feel like the Blues are back on their heels, go into the intermission with a 2-0, 3-0 lead, and then come right back out at the start of the second intermission and really just kind of score another quick goal or, jam something down their throat again, you're going to have, a prime opportunity, I think, to really sort of move this game in your favor. So I want to see that from the Nashville Predators tonight. It is a 7:00 Central puck drop in Smashville. As always, we will have a full recap with our one word to describe the game tomorrow on the Locked On Predators podcast. Still have stuff to take care of for today's episode, though. We are going to be looking around the Western Conference. Who are the 3 teams out of this Western Conference most likely to win the Stanley Cup? Is it going to be the Nashville Predators? No, but we'll still tell you who we have as our top list. That's coming up in just 1 second. First, though, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Do you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? And Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. Offer is only good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA only available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right, to wrap up the show, let's take a look around the Western Conference, shall we? We are going to be looking at the top 3 teams that I think are most likely to win the Stanley Cup out of the West. At number 2, wait, Nick, no, that was stupid. At number 3, it's been a long day and I've forgotten how to count, apparently, so bear with me, everybody. At number 3, we have the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Vegas Golden Knights. If you haven't seen the standings recently, the Golden Knights, who the Nashville Predators were ahead of at one point, they just now remember that they're the defending Stanley Cup champions, and they're saying, yeah, screw that. We coming for our crown again. Vegas has been absolutely red hot over the past 10 games, 7-2-1, and a lot of things are going right in a season where, quite frankly, a lot has gone wrong. You know, they acquired Tomas Hertl, who hasn't played yet. They lost Mark Stone, their captain, for what potentially maybe the rest of the year, although wink, wink, he might be back for the playoffs. There's been some injuries in goal. Aiden Hill's been hurt. Logan Thompson was banged up earlier this year. The Vegas Golden Knights had an excuse to kind of sit back and be like, okay, we sort of hit that cup hangover again, but they're now starting to get hot. Remember Logan Thompson, the guy who was the all-star goalie for the Vegas Golden Knights last year before he got hurt and Aiden Hill decided to become a NHL legend for his postseason run? Well, he's back in the lineup. He's been in because Aiden Hill's been hurt, and Logan Thompson is playing absolutely phenomenal. Something weird like a 935 to 940 save percentage over the past 10 games that he started. Just an absolutely unreal number, whatever it was. And his play is back where Vegas kind of thought it was heading last year. You also have Jack Eichel, who has been absolutely phenomenal. He's really put this team on his back. Jonathan Marchessault, I think a lot of people were kind of expecting maybe last year's, what's it called? Why can't I think of the MVP of the playoffs? Oh my God. Well, he was the MVP of the playoffs. I'll remember the trophy here in a second. Conn Smythe. God, it really has been a long day. Anyway, I think a lot of people were looking at his Conn Smythe win last year as being like, that's a good story. I just don't know if we're going to see that much more of Jonathan Marchessault or get that much more of Jonathan Marchessault. What happens instead? He has a career high in goals. He is on pace to top his career high in points. So they're getting contributions. And Tomas Hertl, who they acquired at the deadline, he's expected to start skating here soon, should be back in the next couple of weeks. So Vegas, they're reloading. But I still think there are 2 teams, maybe a little bit more well-equipped this year to get to the end. Preds fans know both well. Number 2 is going to be the Dallas Stars. Very quietly have climbed to the top of the standings, not just in the Western Conference, but in the entire NHL with 103 points right now. 8-2 in their last 10. They've won 7 straight games. And one of the big reasons why is that Jake Ottinger has kind of figured himself out. Ottinger was really inconsistent to start the year. And I think that was why Dallas was kind of up and down, was Ottinger was kind of up and down. But in his last 5 starts, he's won all 5. No more than 2 goals allowed in any of those games, including a shutout, rocking about a 930 save percentage in that span. So he's back, and that means I think the Stars are back up front because they still have Jason Robertson. They still have Joe Pavelski, even though he's maybe showing a little bit of signs of aging. Unfortunately, Matt Duchene has been an absolute, revelation for them in the middle of that lineup. 62 points. Why couldn't he do that last year? And of course, Miro Heiskanen, not getting the same amount of love as some other defenders do, but he is having what may be his best season since that breakout season in 2019-2020. So I have Dallas second, and number one, yeah, no surprise, it's the Colorado Avalanche. I think the reason that Colorado has the advantage over Dallas is just quite frankly that Colorado has been here before. And there is something to be said for that sort of X factor of a lot of your team have been through long playoff runs before and know what it takes to get to the end. Something that Dallas hasn't really accomplished, even though, they made the Stanley Cup final a couple of years ago, but nobody on their team has really won it. Colorado has won it. They know what it takes. You have Nathan MacKinnon, who I think right now is, this may be a hot take, best player in hockey, I think, over the past calendar year. By far. You have Cale Makar, who continues to be playing out of this world. You're starting to get some more consistent goaltending at Alexander Georgiev, and the depth is finally starting to, sort of carry the load for, maybe some of the other pieces of the team. Some of the moves they made at the deadline, I think, really helped. Jonathan Drouin has been, an absolutely A-plus reclamation project. So some of that depth, it's not at the same level it was a few years ago where Nazem Kadri was, on fire and Burakovsky was on fire. But I think they do have the depth to kind of be good enough to help Colorado get to the promised land again. So Colorado, Dallas, and Vegas in that order. My top 3 Western Conference teams most likely to win the Stanley Cup out of the West. Let me know if you agree with that. And you can tweet us at LO_Predators or comment on this YouTube video to let us know whether you agree or disagree with some of those dangerous teams on the list. As we mentioned, Predators take on the Blues tonight. We'll have a full recap of that game tomorrow on the Locked On Predators podcast. Until we get there, though, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're happy to have you on board. We will be back with all new episode tomorrow. See you then.